Let's get one thing straight. You will suffer. But what if I told you the way you suffer, the reason it breaks you, the reason it repeats, is something you can change? That's what Carl Jung spent his life trying to teach us. And it starts with this one truth. Neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering. Read that again, because what Jung is saying here is brutal and liberating. We don't just suffer, we create suffering when we avoid the real pain we need to face. You're anxious, you're depressed, you're stuck. It's not random. It's your psyche screaming for you to look where you've refused to look. The pain you feel isn't punishment. It's a message. Every person you hate, every situation you repeat, every emotion you suppress, that's not random. That's the shadow. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." That quote should shake you, because it means your suffering isn't just some cosmic mistake. It's a mirror, a reflection of what you haven't integrated yet, the parts of you you've abandoned, the stories you inherited and never questioned, the masks you wear to be loved, the silence you've swallowed to stay safe. Right now, you might be carrying burdens you don't even understand. A fear of failure that paralyzes you. A relationship pattern that keeps repeating. A voice in your head that whispers, "You're not good enough." Jung found that most of our suffering comes not from the outside world, but from the parts of ourselves we refuse to face, what he called the shadow. Think about it. How often do you ignore your deepest emotions, suppress your true desires, or pretend everything's fine when it's not? That avoidance, that's where the real suffering begins. Jung's revolutionary idea was this: your unconscious mind holds everything you deny, repress, or ignore, your fears, your shame, your hidden strengths, and until you bring them into the light, they control you. That's why you self-sabotage. That's why you feel stuck. But here's the life-changing truth. Your shadow isn't your enemy. It's your teacher. If you've ever felt like you're constantly circling the same problems, same arguments, same emotional patterns, same inner emptiness, there's a reason. It's not because you're weak. It's because you've been trained by culture, by family, by fear, to avoid discomfort at all costs. But what Carl Jung understood is this: the avoidance of discomfort is the birthplace of suffering. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. Let that hit, because that's not just about others, that's about us. You, me, all of us. We'd rather stay busy, distracted, endlessly scrolling, binge-watching, achieving, pleasing, than sit quietly with what's actually happening inside. Why? Because silence reveals things. It reveals that we're lonely. It reveals that we're angry. It reveals that we've compromised who we are just to feel accepted. And it reveals that, deep down, we don't feel safe in our own skin. So we run, we self-soothe, we overthink. But the soul doesn't forget. Everything you refuse to deal with goes underground, and Jung warned us, it doesn't stay quiet. That repressed energy becomes the shadow. And the shadow doesn't just show up in nightmares or breakdowns. It shows up in everyday life. It shows up in passive-aggressive comments, in irrational overreactions, in unexplained anxiety, in our attraction to people who reflect our wounds, in our inability to sit still, be honest, or feel at peace even when nothing's wrong. That's the cost of comfort. It buys you temporary numbness at the price of long-term clarity. But here's where the shift happens. Jung spoke of a concept called holding the tension of the opposites. It means this: instead of collapsing into extremes, overreacting or withdrawing, repressing or exploding, you hold the discomfort. You don't escape. You don't act out. You stay with it. That tension between who you were and who you're becoming, between what you want and what you fear, is sacred ground. It's where real transformation begins. But it's not pretty. It's not spiritual fireworks. It's awkward conversations, ugly cries, brutal self-honesty, sitting in silence without distractions. And most people will do anything to avoid that. But those who face it, Those who sit in the fire and don't flinch become unshakable. Why? Because the person who has learned to sit with their darkness no longer fears it. And the moment you stop fearing your darkness, you stop being controlled by it. You don't have to pretend anymore. You don't have to explain yourself to people who don't understand. You stop negotiating your worth with every new relationship, every social situation, every disappointment. Because you've met yourself truly, deeply, and nothing is more powerful than that. Not because your pain isn't valid, not because what happened to you doesn't matter, but because the way you carry it, the way you interpret it, is what's actually keeping you trapped. Let me be clear. You're not suffering because of what they did. You're suffering because you never rewired how you processed it. Most people don't live in the present. They live in a loop, replaying old conversations, reliving betrayals, arguing with ghosts, defending themselves in imaginations. And then they wonder why they feel drained, why they wake up anxious, why nothing ever feels enough. It's because the pain you carry has become your identity, and until you challenge that, until you break that story, you'll keep bleeding from wounds that don't even exist anymore. So let's break something wide open. Suffering doesn't come from the moment. It comes from the meaning you assign to it. You didn't just lose your job. You decided that meant you're a failure. They didn't just walk away. You decided that meant you're unworthy. Life didn't betray you. You just never learned how to carry heartbreak without making it about your value. But here's the part no one tells you. You can end that loop. You can rewire the entire structure of how your mind interprets pain. Because pain is inevitable. But suffering is a decision to grip what's already gone, to fight what you can't control, to believe that your peace must wait for someone else to say sorry. So right now I'm going to ask you something radical. What if nothing is actually wrong with you? What if the anxiety isn't brokenness, but a signal? What if the sadness isn't weakness, but a redirection? What if your suffering is just the alarm system of a soul that's ready to evolve, but stuck living in the patterns of an old identity? Let me say something that might sound harsh, but it's truth. You don't heal by avoiding the pain. You heal by going straight into it, with honesty, clarity, and presence. You stop suffering the day you stop arguing with what is. You stop suffering when you stop asking why it happened and start asking what it taught you. You stop suffering the moment you stop trying to control everything and start controlling how you respond to anything. It's not about being numb. It's about learning to feel without drowning, to face your shadows without becoming them, to sit with discomfort without making it your identity. You want freedom? Here it is. Radical acceptance. Not resignation, not weakness, but the courage to face life on life's terms and stop demanding that it match your preferences. Because the truth is, you don't get peace from a perfect life. You get peace from a powerful mind. And the mind becomes powerful when it stops chasing illusions and starts living in what is. Your freedom has been hiding in one place: your perspective. Carl Jung once said something that few people talk about. Man needs difficulties. They are necessary for health. Read that again. Not comfort, not certainty. Difficulties. Not because life is cruel, but because your nervous system, your soul, and your real strength are forged in friction, not ease. Now here's where people get it twisted. They think suffering makes them noble. They wear their trauma like armor. They rehearse their heartbreaks like war stories. But suffering without transformation, that's just stagnation with a poetic backstory. Let me give you a real-life example. You ever met someone who went through something heavy, divorce, betrayal, financial collapse, and 10 years later, they still talk about it like it happened last night? That's not healing. That's trauma nostalgia. It's your ego clinging to pain because it's familiar, because it gives you identity. Because if you let it go, who would you be without it? This is where Jung's wisdom hits like lightning. He wasn't just interested in fixing people. He was interested in making them whole. And wholeness means you own your story, but you are not owned by it. Let me break something wide open. You are not your anxiety. You are not your childhood. You are not the worst thing that ever happened to you. But if you keep telling yourself that your pain defines you, that your scars are proof you'll never heal, then guess what? You'll stay exactly where you are. Jung's entire life was built on one idea. To heal is to integrate, not to pretend the pain didn't happen, not to drown in it, but to take it in fully and say, this is part of me, but it is not all of me. You want to stop suffering? Stop trying to outrun your shadow. Look at it, talk to it, understand what it needs, and then with calm authority, lead yourself forward. Because when you stop resisting reality, you unlock the one thing no one teaches you. You are not broken. You are becoming. You are not weak for struggling. You're wise enough to be aware of the war happening inside you. But now it's time to end that war, not with more control, not with more shame, but with clarity. Let's talk about the loop. Suffering for most people isn't something new. It's recycled pain, recycled thoughts, recycled emotions. Your brain, like every human brain, is designed to seek patterns, and once it finds one, it hardwires it to conserve energy. So if you've been hurt before, your brain creates a shortcut. Don't trust people. Play small. Always prepare for the worst. You don't choose these thoughts. They run on autopilot. And here's the danger. Eventually, the pain stops being a response to life and starts becoming your lens for life. Everything starts to feel like a threat. Every silence becomes rejection. Every delay becomes abandonment. Every failure becomes proof that you'll never make it. This is the suffering loop, and most people don't even know they're inside it. So how do you break it? Step 1. Awareness. Brutal, unfiltered awareness. You have to catch the voice in your head in the act. When that old tape starts playing, I'm not good enough. This always happens to me. Why does no one ever choose me? You stop. You pause. And you say out loud if you need to, this is an old pattern. I don't need to believe it. Because here's the truth. Your thoughts are not facts. They're habits. And like any habit, they can be changed. Step 2. Shift the narrative. Let's say you're ghosted by someone you cared about. Old pattern. I'm not lovable. I must have done something wrong. New pattern. Their silence is their story. My worth isn't up for negotiation. You get laid off from your job. Old pattern. I'm a failure. I'll never be stable. New pattern. This is redirection. My value isn't tied to any one role. Rewriting the narrative doesn't mean lying to yourself. It means choosing a story that empowers you instead of destroys you. Step 3. Embody your power. This isn't some abstract spiritual idea. This is biological. When you sit up straight, breathe deeply, move your body with intention, your nervous system starts to believe you're safe. That's how you train your body to stop reacting to past pain, like it's happening right now. When you reclaim your breath, your posture, your tone of voice, you are literally taking the wheel back from your trauma. Because trauma loves control, but healing loves surrender. Not surrender to pain, but to truth. And the truth is, you were never meant to be a victim of your story. You were meant to be the author of its next chapter. Here's a truth they won't teach you in school. Most people are terrified of silence, not because it's empty, but because it's too full. It echoes back everything they've been avoiding. Carl Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. That includes staying busy 24/7, jumping from relationship to relationship, scrolling, drinking, numbing, overworking, anything to avoid stillness. Why? Because in stillness, the masks fall. In silence, the pain speaks. And if you're not prepared to listen, if you haven't built the strength to hold space for your own emotions, then silence feels like a threat. But here's the paradox. Silence is not where you break. Silence is where you begin to rebuild. Let me give you a real-world example. Think of someone who just went through a breakup, or lost their job, or hit rock bottom emotionally. What's the first thing most people say? Just keep yourself busy. Distract yourself. Don't think about it. But distraction isn't healing, it's delay. And delay becomes suffering the moment distraction wears off, and the wound is still right there, raw and untouched. But imagine this instead. You sit down, no music, no phone, no noise. Just you and your thoughts and the discomfort rising in your chest. That's where the real work begins. That's where your nervous system learns. I can feel this and survive it. You begin to observe your fear instead of becoming it. You witness the sadness instead of drowning in it. You stop running, and for the first time, you face what's actually chasing you. You. That moment is the birth of inner power. Jung understood this deeply. He wasn't just a psychologist. He was a mystic of the soul. He believed solitude was not isolation, but integration. He believed that when you remove the noise of the world, you finally begin to hear the quiet voice of the self. And the self, he taught, contains everything. The pain, the peace, the light, the shadow, the part of you that's still scared, and the part of you that knows it's time to rise. You want to stop suffering? Turn down the world's volume, not forever, not to escape, but to return, stronger, clearer, anchored. Because here's what happens when you sit in silence long enough. You start separating the truth from the noise. You realize the fear you carried wasn't yours, it was inherited. The shame wasn't truth, it was conditioning. The doubt wasn't fact. It was an echo from a weaker version of you. And then, without anyone clapping, without a single word spoken, you change. That change, that calmness in your breath, that stillness in your decisions, that unshakable presence you begin to carry. That's not luck, that's earned peace. The kind you don't need to prove. The kind that can sit in a room full of chaos and still feel untouchable. That's what happens when you finally face your soul. And when you do, suffering doesn't stand a chance. Here's what most people get wrong. They think healing is something you arrive at. That one day you'll wake up, all the pain will be gone, and you'll feel perfectly healed. That's not how this works. Healing isn't a destination. It's a way of moving through the world. It's how you handle discomfort. It's what you do when someone triggers your old wound. It's how you respond when the universe tests your growth with the very thing you swore you were done with. It's in the moment your mind screams, "They don't respect you. Say something now." And you breathe. You pause. And you choose to respond with strength, not insecurity. That's healing. That's freedom. That's the moment suffering loses its grip on you. Carl Jung had a chilling insight that speaks to this exact idea. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Read that again. The patterns you haven't questioned, the emotional wounds you haven't faced, the beliefs you inherited without inspection, they're running your life. They're shaping your relationships, your fears, your self-worth. And because they're invisible, you think they're just how life is. No. They're not fate. They're programming. And the moment you start to live with awareness, conscious awareness, you begin to reprogram the whole system. So what does that look like practically? 1. You slow down. You don't just react anymore. You observe your triggers. You get curious instead of defensive. You ask, what am I protecting right now? What story am I believing? 2. You stop outsourcing your worth. No more waiting for the text back. No more tying your self-esteem to someone else's mood, attention, or approval. You start walking into rooms knowing you belong, because you belong to yourself first. 3. You say no without guilt. You stop bleeding yourself dry to be liked. You realize that boundaries aren't selfish, they're sacred. They're the way you show your inner child that you're finally choosing you. 4. You become someone calm can't be taken from. You carry a peace that doesn't break when things don't go your way, because it's not based on control anymore. It's based on trust in yourself, in your path, in the process. This is the life Jung wanted us to live. A life where we own our shadow, where we don't collapse when things fall apart, but rise stronger, deeper, more integrated. Because the truth is, you'll never stop life from being life. There will still be pain. There will still be endings. There will still be moments that test everything you've built. But if you've done this inner work, if you've turned the unconscious into conscious, If you've faced the silence, reprogrammed the loop, embodied the wisdom, then those moments won't break you. They'll reveal you. Most people think transformation is this loud, epic, life-shattering event. But here's the truth. Real transformation is often quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It shows up in the little moments when no one's watching. It looks like this. You feel that familiar rise of anxiety, but this time, you don't run from it. You sit still, you breathe, you stay present. You hear the voice of your inner critic trying to tear you down, and instead of believing it, you say, "Thank you for your opinion, but I'm not letting you drive today." Someone tries to bait you into the same old argument, but you're not playing anymore. You've outgrown the need to prove yourself. That's real healing. It's not flashy. It's not for validation. It's a deep internal recalibration, a shift from reactivity to presence, from fear to clarity. Carl Jung's entire body of work was centered around this idea. Wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration of the contraries. Let's break that down. Most people think growth means getting rid of their flaws. But Jung says no. It means integrating them, bringing the shadow into the light, not to shame it, but to understand it, to reclaim its power. Let's take a simple situation. Imagine you text someone you care about, and they don't respond. The old version of you spirals. "They're ignoring me. I'm not important. What did I do wrong?" Now pause. Where's that coming from? It's not about the person not texting back. It's about a wound, likely one from years ago. A time when someone made you feel like your presence didn't matter. And every new situation that feels even remotely similar, your subconscious tries to protect you with overreaction. Not because it's rational, but because it's familiar. Here's what transformation looks like now. You still feel the sting, but instead of spiraling, you become aware. You say, "This feeling is familiar, but this is not that person. And I am not that helpless child anymore." That shift, that awareness, that's how you break a decades-old loop in a single moment. As you evolve, you'll notice subtle but powerful internal changes. Triggers become teachers. You don't avoid them, you examine them. Loneliness becomes solitude. You stop feeling empty when alone. Instead, you meet yourself. You realize you were never the problem. You were just never taught how to listen to your own soul. Shame turns into self-respect. You stop apologizing for existing. You stop shrinking to fit others' comfort zones. And the best part, you don't need anyone else to change for you to feel peace. Jung called this the individuation process, becoming whole by discovering who you really are underneath the roles, trauma, and programming. Not the version of you that seeks approval, not the version that's trying to be liked, or safe, or small, but the version of you that is undeniably real. The version that doesn't need to impress because it just is. Now let's be real. Most people will never reach this level of peace. Why? Because they don't want to do the hard part, facing the mirror when it's uncomfortable, sitting in silence when the distractions wear off, letting go of false identities, even when they're familiar. Jung warned about this. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. It sounds beautiful, but in practice, it means confronting your envy, your anger, your fears, your insecurities, and instead of judging them, you welcome them like lost children. You say, "I see you. I understand why you're here, but I no longer need you to run my life." And in that moment, something shifts permanently. The fear loses its grip, the shame loses its bite, and in its place comes a calm you can't fake. You've done the inner work. You've faced your wounds, rewritten the story, reclaimed your strength. But then what? You still have to go back out into the world, into the workplace, into family dynamics, into relationships where people still know you as your old self. That's where the real challenge begins. Because here's the hard truth. The world will often try to drag you back into the version of yourself you've outgrown. They'll say things like, "You've changed. You're too distant now. You think you're better than us?" But they don't realize this isn't ego. This is boundaries. This is the version of you that finally stopped bleeding for approval. Carl Jung wrote, "In each of us there is another whom we do not know." That unknown self, that's the authentic you the world hasn't fully met yet. And when you begin to live as that version, unapologetically, you'll trigger people who are still living in their false selves. So how do you stay grounded? 1. Don't argue your transformation, embody it. You don't need to convince people you've changed. You just show them, with your energy, your presence, your choices. Let your boundaries speak louder than your explanations. Let your calmness make noise in chaotic rooms. Let your consistency reveal the depth of your growth. 2. Anchor your identity internally, not externally. If your self-worth is still attached to how others respond to your growth, you'll keep shrinking yourself to stay safe. You need to know who you are before you walk into the room. That way, no reaction, no judgment, no manipulation can shake your foundation. Real peace feels like this. Someone disrespects you, and you don't overreact. Someone distances themselves, and you don't chase. Someone misunderstands your silence, and you don't explain. Not because you're cold, but because you're centered. 3. Expect resistance, and meet it with clarity, not emotion. When you grow, people who benefited from your old patterns, your people-pleasing, your compliance, your guilt, will push back. That's okay. Your job is not to fix their discomfort. Your job is to stay aligned. Think of it like this. You're upgrading your internal operating system. Not everyone has the software to understand it yet. That doesn't mean you go back. It means you keep moving forward, even if it's alone for a while. And ironically, that sacred solitude will attract people who meet you at your new level. Not out of trauma, not out of desperation, but out of truth. 4. Remember, this isn't about perfection. It's about awareness. You'll still get triggered. You'll still fall into old patterns sometimes. You'll still feel that ache in your chest when someone touches an old wound. But the difference now, you catch it. You pause. You breathe. You choose again. And in that moment, suffering loses its grip, because now you're no longer reacting blindly. You are conscious. And consciousness is the end of compulsion. You've walked through fire, faced your shadow, let go of old identities. And now you stand here, not perfect, but present. Not fearless, but courageous enough to stay awake. You no longer need to be liked to feel worthy. You no longer collapse when things don't go your way. You no longer negotiate your boundaries just to keep false peace, because something in you has shifted forever. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not who your parents needed you to be. Not who society told you to become. Not who you pretended to be to survive. But who you are at your core before the world taught you to shrink. And when you live from that place, your energy changes. Your relationships evolve. Your presence becomes medicine. You stop trying to control life, and instead you learn to meet it with strength. You don't chase healing anymore. You become the space where healing happens. So here's your reminder. You are not broken. You are not too much. You are not behind. You are becoming. And that becoming is not linear. It's not comfortable, but it's sacred. The pain, it was never here to punish you. It was here to wake you up. And now that you're awake, there's no going back. So walk forward, not as someone searching for healing, but as someone who knows, without a doubt, you are the healer. You are the calm in the chaos, the light in the shadow, the quiet power in a world that's forgotten its soul. You've earned this peace. Now live like it.